Hello, friends. Welcome back to another week of Black Girl Magic Book Chat. My name is Larissa, and this month, every day this month, I'm celebrating, every week this month, I'm celebrating Women's History Month by reading a book by a Black woman author and sharing those stories with you. So this week I read The Banned Bookshop of Maggie Banks. I read it on my Ooh, can you see? I read it on my iPad. The Banned Bookshop of Maggie Banks. I obviously picked it because there's a black lady and some books on the cover. And I really like this book, y'all, because it was, I don't know, soft is not the word that I'm looking for, but it was a very lighthearted read, and at the end of it, like, I closed it and I smiled. You know, that was sweet. And so that's how I felt at the end of it. And I think I really needed that this week because I had a really tough week. So I'll jump right in. So this story follows Maggie Banks. Maggie Banks is a 20-something biracial woman who's moved to this town called Bell River, to take over a bookstore for her friend while her friend is going on maternity leave. And this comes at like an opportune time for Maggie because Maggie is in this position of transition, if you will. So she's lost her job. She's been living with her parents for a little while, and so she's kind of like, all right, I'm going to go to Bell River. I've got, I think, maybe 4 or 5 or 6 months or something like that, where I'm going to, run this bookstore for my friend and like figure out my life. Because this is kind of her problem. She can't keep a job. And the biggest reason is that none of these jobs feel right to her. She doesn't enjoy them and often finds herself distracted by party planning or event planning that she does for other employees to boost morale in the workplace. So she's like one of those people. She's the person who always wants to celebrate everybody's birthday, wants to do these fun little activities for everybody, as opposed to typing up emails all day long. So she's like, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to use this time to figure out my goals. What's a job that I can do and do well? So what's unique about this town of Bell River and this bookstore, and honestly all the businesses in this town, is that it is named after this guy named Edward Bell. And Edward Bell, he wrote a number of books, and so that's like that city's claim to fame. We are the home of Edward Bell. He wrote these books or something like that. So it's a tourist attraction pretty much the entire town. And so a lot of the businesses, there's a museum, a cafe, a B&B, they all kind of fall along the theme of Edward Bell and his books or whatever. So the bookstore only sells books by Edward Bell or classics, because that's what Edward Bell read. He only read those classic type literature things. And because of that, and I think he died around that time, no books published after 1968. Okay. So in this bookstore, they can only read books. They only sell books that were published before 1968 or books written by Edward Bell. So on one of Maggie's first days, she gets all of the Bell books, and they also have this little table that's his like writing table. Is where he wrote his best book, his like first book, his masterpiece or whatever. This table, she gets them taken away because she like chats with this customer about this supposed mistress that Edward Bell has, and this speculation really grinds the gears of Ralph, who's his grandson and also co-owner of this store, and co-owner of most of the businesses in town. And so he's like, I don't like the way that you're portraying my grandfather. That's not what you should be doing. So until you're ready to talk more about Edward Bell, I'm going to take his stuff away. And mind you, because it's a tourist attraction, this is the big draw, right? So it's gone. So now there's really no reason for people to come into this bookstore because no one wants to just buy classics, right? Especially the people who live there. So Maggie's like, oh my God, like, this is my friend's store. I'm messing with her livelihood. I need to do something that's going to keep making money, because now my money maker's gone. So she comes up with these ideas, and they're really cool. One is like holding these like secret literary events, where she kind of takes these classics that they sell and have authors reimagine them in different genres. Really, really cool. Something that I feel like the library should do. But anyway, so there's that. And then she also starts selling contemporary books kind of under the table. And so as she's creating these literary events, she's also reading more, because at the beginning of the story, she's not a big reader. So she's like learning as she goes, and she begins to build this community of people who want to come for her events and then come to buy these illicit books, if you will. And so she's like coming to really learn and love the people and the town, despite this Edward Bell nonsense, and some of the secrets that come out about him as the book goes on. I want to tell them. But the problem is, while she's doing this and she's building community and she's getting to know all of the people and she's making friends, she's also lying, right, to her friend Rochelle, who owns the bookstore. She's lying to this guy that she's seeing because he worked for Ralph Bell, and she knows that if he finds out, he will feel like it is his duty to tell his boss. And you can, like, that is explained why in the book. And she's like, well, I can't tell him because I don't want to jeopardize his job either. So she's lying to everybody. And, obviously, truth always comes to the light. But a beautiful thing about this book is that the way that it works out in the end, it's just very cute. So there are two things that I really take away from this book. First is that books build community. So like I said, Maggie isn't a reader at the start of this. And when she meets this romance author. The woman writes rom-coms. And so she's like, okay, yeah, I'll read your book. She likes it. And so she's like, hey, maybe I do like reading. And the guy that she's seeing, he's more of he does some, I think, like sci-fi stuff, but also some of the classics too. And so they start to kind of exchange books, and she's realizing that, okay, maybe I don't love classics, but romance is not the only genre I love. So she gets to kind of learn all this stuff. So, building community between herself and the guy that she's seeing. But also, as she is having these events, she's getting to know people. People are coming to talk about books, but they stay because Maggie is sweet and she's personable and she's fun, and you kind of want to be around her. And when that was happening, people would start coming into the store to hang out. People hang out in bookstores. So that is kind of this community that she built, and it's like so lovely to see, because I know that's true. I follow several book sites, blogs, pages on Instagram and stuff like that, and we're commenting about books, and then that kind of leads into, oh, this reminds me of when I did this. This reminds me of one time. You tell these stories based on these books, and you get to know people that you would probably never get to know just because y'all like the same book. As a librarian, I approve of that theme. But second, though, a little less fun, it's this idea, so in this book, Maggie struggles kind of with life, if you will. But this idea of knowing your exact path. Maggie is struggling because she doesn't know what she wants to do career-wise, and feels like a failure, pretty much. And I think it speaks to our society's sort of obsession with making children choose their life's trajectory. We ask 16, obviously you want to start thinking about your life, but we ask 18-year-olds to choose, okay, what are you going to do for the rest of your life? Right? We make them choose, and their brains aren't even fully developed. And that leads to unhappy people, because we get into these jobs obviously we don't know anything about, but because we saw it somewhere or we know that it makes a lot of money, or whatever the case may be, we choose these positions or these jobs, these careers, and then we get in them and then we hate them, but we feel like we can't leave them because of reasons, right? Because there's very little space in our lives to explore and to try to figure out, actually, yes, I like this topic, but am I a fit for this job? Or how can I even choose my job based on my interests? And so and not only that, it also speaks to like the value that we place on specific jobs. So Maggie has had a number of jobs, including like working in an office. I think at one point she was a coffee shop barista. And when she worked that office job, her parents were so proud of her because like it's this stable job, but she hated it. And when she worked at the coffee shop, she liked it because she was able to interact with people. And we look down on that as a society, right? Like if you work at a coffee shop and if it's not a stopping point, like if it's your destination, people are kind of like, but what else are you doing, right? And we don't put value in something that should have value, because I go to coffee shops very often and I love them. And what sense does it make to tell somebody who's supplying me with the caffeine that I need every day that their job is a poor one because it's not, an office job, right? So we get a lot of that. And as someone who used to work with children, I used to teach middle school. It was always interesting to kind of see the jobs that they said that they wanted, because they'd be like, I want to be a doctor and a lawyer. And you're like, no, you're not. Right? You can't be a doctor and a lawyer. But doing like having asking 13 and 14-year-olds, what are you going to be when you grow up? They don't know who they are now. They don't know, And so obviously, and Maggie's in her 20s, and then we just kind of think that you should have your life mapped out by the time you're, 25, and that's just like unrealistic. And I think we should talk about that more as a society. So that's kind of the bigger chunk that I got out of that. But this was an all's well that ends well sort of book. I really enjoyed Maggie as a character. I would be her friend. I think we'd have a great time together. This was definitely something lighthearted, and I recommend it on like a rainy day, curled up on your couch with some tea or coffee or an adult beverage if that's your thing. So yeah, the Banned Bookshop of Maggie Banks. We've got one more week, friends. I should probably know what I'm reading next week, but I don't. But I feel like I've been doing a great job of choosing, so I'm excited to see what I should pick up. Until next time, thank you again for watching Black Girl Magic Book Chat Women's History Month edition.